Hello everybody. We just went ahead and finished Kana, Bridge of Spirits. That is the proper pronunciation, but I'll probably say Kana a million times because I'm retarded, so get over it. I don't know why, but I keep saying Kana. But Kana, Bridge of Spirits, just finished it up. It took me, right around 12 hours to complete it, like 11 and a half, but apparently average completion is around 9 hours, so keep that in mind. I'm kind of like a completionist, so I did go for a lot of the secrets and fully explored the areas. I didn't get 100% completion, but I was definitely taking my time exploring and doing a lot of the extra stuff. So let's get into the pros and the cons for this game. But first thing I'll say is this is easily the best game I've played in 2021. It is incredible. Let's get into the pros. First, the visuals. I mean, this is the most striking part of the game. It's the whole allure of the game. It's truly like you are playing a Pixar movie. It is incredibly good looking. I'm playing on PC and I'm playing on all like ultra graphics and 1440p, and the performance is okay. I just capped it at 60 because it was very variable. Sometimes it'd be at 120, sometimes it would be all the way down to like 15 in some areas. So it's really variable. I think it runs pretty well on PS5. This is on PS4, PS5, and PC. Unfortunately, no Xbox or Switch or anything like that. And unfortunately, on PC, it is on the Epic Game Store. It's not on Steam as of yet. So that's a little bit of a bummer. But this game is absolutely incredible to look at. It has some of the best lighting I've actually ever seen in a game. It is crazy. Kana's staff, I said Kana, and you know what? I'm just gonna roll with it from now on. If I don't say Kana, deal with it. Kana's staff, when you are like in a dark cave, the subtle blue light from her staff, and as you're using your pulse ability and stuff like that, and little crystals are lighting up and stuff, it is all incredibly good looking. The cutscenes are literally like a Pixar movie. They're weirdly enough in 30 FPS, which is a little jarring when you're playing in 60 and then goes down to 30, but they are really, really good looking. The next positive I would say is the characters. Every single character that they introduced, I enjoyed. I liked them. There was one character that didn't quite hit for me. It's actually like a couple. And you'll know when you play the game who they are. But that couple, they didn't really resonate with me. I found their voice acting a little bit flat, but everybody else, especially Kana, really, really delivers. And even the kids, there's like 2 little kid characters at the very beginning of the game, and their voice acted really, really well. Also, I genuinely enjoy the world of the game. This whole idea of, and no spoilers here or anything, but this whole idea of guiding spirits that can't move on, guiding them to kind of move on to the afterlife, is really compelling from a gameplay and a narrative perspective, because, you know, you're trying to help, and the world is covered in this corruption, and as you go through and you find secrets and you just play through the game, you're slowly but surely purifying the forest, purifying the village, and making it, you know, green and luxurious and beautiful again. And it's just a very compelling world to be in. I really enjoyed every single second of it. Also, just the narrative that it's telling, I enjoyed the narrative. I understand some of the gripes with it. Some people say it's repetitive or it's very straightforward, and if this game was any longer, I would agree. But I think it's the perfect length to where at least for me, it doesn't feel repetitive, especially if you're beating it in like 9 hours. It doesn't feel repetitive, and it does a really good job of keeping you interested in all of the characters and slowly but surely pushing forward. And to get kind of into the gameplay, it almost has like a Metroidvania type of feel to it at times, where you're like, oh yeah, now I have this ability, so I can go back and do this, which I previously couldn't do. And if I had to really explain this game, if I had to compare it to any other games, I would say that this is like combining Pikmin and Zelda. I think that is like the perfect combination because you're utilizing the rot, which are your little babies. That's what I call them, my babies. You're utilizing your babies in a sort of Pikmin-esque way where you're modifying your attacks and making them stronger or having different effects, and you're using them to solve puzzles, lift things for you, carry things for you. It's a very Pikmin-esque gameplay loop. And you're collecting more and more of them as you go on until you have a fucking entire army, right? But it has the Zelda feel where the combat is quite simple. That is a complaint that people have is the combat and the general gameplay is pretty simple. And once again, I would understand that complaint if the game was longer. I think it is actually quite impressive how many mechanics are in the game for how short it is. But, you know, just like when you're playing Zelda, the combat itself in Zelda is nothing interesting, right? It's dodge, attack, dodge, maybe block, maybe parry. And then you get new abilities and you have to use those abilities against the bosses, right? You get a grapple hook in Zelda, you can bet your nutsack that you're going to be using that grapple hook in the next boss fight, right? That's kind of how Zelda works. This game, the exact same. There's certain enemies that you have to use certain abilities on in order to beat them at all. So it has a very similar gameplay to a Zelda game. So I don't really agree with the gripes with the game from a gameplay perspective or combat perspective. I think it does quite a good job, especially when you consider, and this is a big thing to consider, this development team, Ember Lab, this is their first video game. Like, just think about that for a second. This game looks this good, it's this well voice acted, it has this compelling of a narrative and a world, and this is their first game. And it's not a full price title, it's a $40 title, right? So the fact that you could get a brand new PS5 game for $40 when those are normally $70 is incredibly compelling as well. So I am giving them a little bit of leniency because, one, it's not a full price title. Two, it's their first fucking game. Cut the guy some slack. And three, it's not a very long game, you know? So it's not like they need to constantly be reinventing the wheel or anything like that. And then the final positive that I would say is the music. I mean, you hear it right now. They have their upbeat, you know, fun music where you're walking around with your little babies and you're exploring and stuff. And then they have some actually very emotional tracks. And I teared up and cried a little bit a couple times through the game. So they do a good job of hitting the feels when they want to. To go into the negatives, okay? This is really just a lot of small gripes that I genuinely feel can kind of get patched. Some of them can't, but first things first, the most annoying one for me. Mouse and keyboard support is very lacking. The controls are mostly okay. However, there's a mechanic in the game where you control all your babies and you move them around, and this is something that's necessary in gameplay to solve puzzles and to progress. You move your babies around as one big baby, right? And you clear away corruption and stuff like that. for some reason, they thought it would be a good idea to put the control of that big baby on the mouse. And it is awful. It is terrible because it's clearly made for controller, right? You push up on the right joystick on the controller and your babies are just going forward endlessly. However, on the mouse, you move them with the mouse. So if you want to keep moving them forward, and sometimes you have to control them for quite a little while, you have to, you know, guide them across the map. This is what it looks like. Across your fucking desk to try and move these little babies forward. It's absolutely ridiculous. Actually, when I was streaming the game, I had to literally put my camera down on my mouse to show, and I was just the entire time. It was absolutely ridiculous. So that controls really, really poorly. The general gameplay though isn't that bad on mouse and keyboard. It's a little meh, but you know, you can rebind everything except for that. There's no changing that. I tried my hardest. You can't change that. So that's a little bit of a bummer. It's definitely a game made for controller, no doubt about it. Another little teeny gripe that I have is the performance. You know, I kind of alluded to it before, but I mean, I'm on a Ryzen 7 3700X, overclocked to 4.2 gigahertz. That's an 8-core CPU, 16 cores hyper-threaded, and I'm on a 2070 Super, which is quite a good card, definitely above average. There is no reason I should be getting 15 FPS in areas. There's none. I don't care what is happening. Even with fucking ray tracing on, I should be hitting 30 FPS minimum. So that's something they can fix in patches though. But some of the areas really chug, and I don't know what it's like on console. I imagine console's probably using a mixture of like medium settings, and I was on all ultra settings, so maybe that's what it is, but there's no excuse for that. Definitely performance needs to be improved a bit. I don't like capping games at 60. You know, a game like this, it's not that big of a deal, but still, paid for 144 hertz refresh rate monitor, man. Let's get a little bit higher FPS. You know what I'm saying? So, and then there's a couple little bugs. Nothing crazy, but there were a few times that my babies got stuck under the ground. There was one time where I had my babies carrying something to solve a puzzle to progress the main story, and they actually moved the thing underground. So I had to reset my game in order for that to fix. But those are all pretty minor bugs, kind of just take you out of it a little bit. And then the last gripe I would say is this game kind of does a Doom Eternal, where I was loving it until the final boss. No spoilers, but I did not like the final boss. The checkpoint system is terrible. I played the entire game on hard mode, by the way. They do have a very hard that you unlock after you beat the game. So I played it on the hardest difficulty that you can. And it's definitely a Doom Eternal situation where, you know, I played Doom Eternal, got to the final boss, fucking hated the final boss. And that really dropped my score for me because obviously, you know, recency bias. Even if that last portion of the game is only 5% of the game, it's the most recent thing you're going to remember. So when you're giving your review, you're talking about it, that's going to be on your mind, you know, in the forefront. So that really bothered me in this game as well, is the final boss. All of the bosses are really good. They have some really unique mechanics to them. Some you won't even notice. Like I was fighting one boss, and it was a boss that uses projectiles. So I was kind of, you know, fighting back with my projectiles, and I didn't even notice until, like, as the fight was ending, but I could actually throw stuff and the boss would get distracted by that and shoot at the stuff that I threw, allowing me to, you know, get close and attack them. And I didn't even really, like, I did the entire boss fight without even utilizing that mechanic. So it made me go, damn, what other mechanics did I miss on fights? Because I was just, you know, kind of brute forcing it, not really using my brain too much. So I think all the boss fights use the mechanics in a really clever way, other than the final one. I did not like the final one, and having to restart the entire fight and go through the entire thing over again every time you die when there's all this little busy work that you have to do is frustrating. But overall, like I said, I genuinely think this is the best game I've played in 2021. It's so refreshing to just play a game that is fun. You know, that's fun, it's lighthearted. I'm so sick of all these edgy games, Last of Us and stuff like that, where it's like, in order to be a good game, you have to be depressing, you know, like, oh, my dad's dead and I need to avenge him and all my friends are dying and the world sucks and, oh, it's awful, and all this blood and gore and, you know? Or Ghost of Tsushima, or any of these fucking games that, like, end up being very depressing. It's nice to just play something that's like, I got all my babies, and look, this baby has a pancake on his head, and this baby has a mushroom on his head, and some squash, and some flowers. This baby has a little bunny rabbit on his head, and a cat, and bows, and stuff like that. Or that baby has a freaking crown, you know? It's so refreshing to just play something that's fun, it's lighthearted, and I really, really enjoyed my time with it. All in all, I would give this game a solid 9. I think this is a 9 out of 10 video game. It's very, very good. My rating scale is 5 is average, 6 above average, 7 is good, 8 is great, 9 is amazing, 10 is a masterpiece in its own right. You know, a game to be remembered throughout the ages. I think this is a solid 9. I think that if they fix the bugs, they fix the performance, maybe they add like a checkpoint or some way to save in the final, or some way to like heal up a little bit in the final boss fights. If they fix all of that stuff, and fix the keyboard and mouse support, I'd say this game could actually hit like a 9.5. It's very, very good, especially for a $40 title and the developer's first game. It was a blast. I had a very fun time playing it, and I think I'll probably replay it again on the very hard difficulty. So that's my thoughts on the game. Definitely recommend you guys check it out if it's up your alley. The puzzles aren't too hard, in case you're worried about that. I suck nuts at puzzles, and I didn't get stuck on any of them. So, it's not that bad. Puzzles aren't too hard. But, yeah. Thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one, and I'll see all of you in the next video or stream now.